are attending the January Sandwiching in History tour of the First United Methodist Church. The church was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1986 for its Romanesque Revival style architecture. But before we get started, I want to thank a few people, church members Bob Nelson and Martha Sowell. Am I getting that right? They have been very, very helpful today. We've also got some volunteers, Paul and Jane Brown, Linda Baker, Keith Martin, Dick and Sue Blake, Richard Butler, Ron and Hazel Clark, Edna Ricks, and Shaquila Rahman. I want to thank everybody so much for all your help today. It's been really, really beneficial to me in my work today. I'd also like to recognize Rachel Patton, who researched and compiled the original script for today's tour. And this is really going to be a great tour because besides the sanctuary that you're in today, you get to walk around and see some other resources within the church that you may not know about, and you'll be able to visit those. Just look for the volunteers, they'll tell you where to go, and I'll tell you about those in just a few minutes. From 1880 to 1900, the Romanesque Revival style was used on large public buildings in the United States. And this church in particular was built in the Richardsonian Romanesque style, which was made popular by Henry Hobson Richardson beginning in 1872 when he built Trinity Church in Boston, Massachusetts. He added different elements to the original Romanesque style, which had traditionally used tall, lean features and smooth walls. His version included multiple towers. Some of them were squared with pyramidal roofs, and some were rounded with cone-shaped roofs. He always used heavy masonry walls. Hobson also used brick and rusticated granite, asymmetrical facades, rounded arches over windows and doors, and the use of contrasting colors to emphasize details. The eyebrow, or very small dormer, and arches supported by squat columns with cushion capitals were also typical of the style. And a lot of these features are seen on the current sanctuary and chapel areas of First United Methodist Church, which was designed by Little Rock architect Frank Gibb. When you go outside, you're going to notice the Romanesque features in Gibb's combination of brick, terracotta, and granite. The two corner towers on the primary facade are topped with pyramidal roofs, and the turret on the southeast side of the church is topped with a cone roof. Also, you'll see repeating arches at the entry, the front doors there, and arches over windows and fan lights as well. Frank Gibb is credited with the design of many buildings in Little Rock as well as 60 courthouses throughout Arkansas. However, if it were not for his father's interest in real estate development, Frank would probably have never gotten interested in architecture at all. When the family arrived in Little Rock in 1871, Frank's father, Edward, built spec houses, and he invested in real estate to take advantage of Little Rock's favorable housing market at that time. During the 1880s, Edward Gibb built several houses in what is now known as the Governor's Mansion Historic District. While his father was in Little Rock, Frank Gibb was at school in Missouri working on a degree in engineering. Frank attended the Missouri School of Mines in Rolla and returned to Little Rock after his 1882 graduation. He appeared in the Little Rock paper many times for his successes in school, but upon returning to Little Rock, he worked with his father, and by the late 1880s, he was designing houses for his father's clients without any formal architectural training. Frank Gibb's obituary credits him with work on nearly 60 of Arkansas's county courthouses, including the Yell County Courthouse in Dardanelle and the Phillips County Courthouse in Helena. He also designed the Buckstaff Bathhouse in Hot Springs, Eastside Junior High in Little Rock, and the Ada Thompson Memorial Home in Little Rock. Unfortunately, after his death in 1932, Gibb's family cleaned out his office and apparently discarded most of his architectural drawings and records. As a result, it's nearly impossible to clearly identify his works. The cornerstone for the chapel, which is the portion to the east of the sanctuary, which is behind us, was laid in was completed by June 1897. The cornerstone for the sanctuary was laid on August 16, 1899, and services were held in the chapel until the sanctuary was completed in November 1900. There were frame buildings constructed to the north of the sanctuary in the 1920s to house Sunday school classrooms, but they were removed to make way for the education annex in 1950. And you'll notice when you go outside as well that the education annex is designed in a style that's compatible with that of the sanctuary. It's connected by a series of arches that are supported by the same squat columns that you see at the front door with the cushioned capitals, and it features a rose window and pairs of narrow arched windows. A rose window or a Catherine window is often used as a generic term applied to a circular window being divided into segments by stone mullions and tracery. The Activities Building was constructed in 1971 farther to the north of the Education Annex. And this building features a restrained, repeated arch motif that provides a modern link to the original Romanesque Revival architecture. The only major exterior alteration to the historic sanctuary has been the realignment of the Center Street stairs where you came in. The stairs originally came straight down toward the west, but they were altered in 1950 to have north and south approaches. Little Rock's First Methodist congregation was organized in 1831 in a Cumberland Presbyterian church building at the southwest corner of Main and 2nd Streets. By 1832, the congregation was meeting in a warehouse building just to the east of the present-day Capitol Hotel, which was built in 1877. The First Methodist Church building was constructed in 1833 on West 2nd Street, which was then called Cherry Street, behind the Capitol Hotel. The new church was constructed of large handmade bricks, which were readily available because the bricks had been selected as the primary building material for the new state capitol building, or the old State House, which was under construction about a block away. The building was 35 by 45 feet, and the pews consisted of split log puncheons, or logs with a flat side and a rounded side. In 1836, Arkansas Methodist churches formed the Arkansas Conference, and the church on Cherry Street received the designation of station, which meant that they were capable of supporting a full-time pastor. In 1844, the church became Methodist Episcopal Church South. The largest and most divisive split in the Methodist Church happened in that year over the issue of slavery. The Methodist Protestant Church had already split off at that time. The Methodist Episcopal Church South supported slavery, while the Methodist Episcopal Church did not. Although churches in northern and western Arkansas attempted to stay with the Methodist Episcopal Church, most of them ceased worship until Reconstruction. Even after the Civil War, the congregations remained segregated within two separate conferences or regional governing bodies within the state. The break would not be healed until the Uniting Conference of 1939, which saw the formation of the Methodist Church. The Little Rock congregation was aligned with the Methodist Episcopal Church South until 1939. The United Methodist Church was created in 1968 when the Methodist Church joined with the Evangelical United Brethren Church in Dallas, Texas. During the Civil War, the Union Army used the 2nd Street Church as a hospital, so the Methodist congregation met in the synagogue, the Presbyterian Church, and in a variety theater on the northwest corner of Main and 4th Streets. In 1865, the 2nd Street Church building was returned to the congregation, which, as I said, had split before the war. The Methodist Episcopal Church South took over the church in that year. By the mid-1870s, the membership dwindled, but however money was raised, much of it through the efforts of the Ladies Floral Society and the Ladies 2nd Street Methodist Church Society, as well as the sale of the church building to Phones Brothers Hardware. Property was purchased at the northeast corner of 8th and Center Streets in 1879. St. Louis architect J.H. Legg furnished plans free of charge, but a lot of problems emerged at this time, including the illness of the pastor and infighting among the congregants, so it remained unfinished until 1880 when a large brick Gothic revival-style church was finally completed. During construction, the congregation moved around from the Opera House on Main Street, the Centenary Methodist Episcopal Church, and Duell Hall between 5th and 6th Streets. But when the new Gothic Revival building was constructed, there was a period of stability. A parsonage was secured and a sexton was hired. So the church had about 5 good years, but in 1895, a wood stove in the church caused a fire which killed 2 firemen and destroyed the building. While a new church was being constructed, the congregation met in the YMCA Hall in Glenwood Park, which was at 17th and May. The chapel portion to the southeast of the sanctuary was built in 1896 to replace the 1880 building that had burned. By Thanksgiving 1900, the new sanctuary was completed by Frank Gibbs. In the 1920s, this church was the largest Methodist church in Arkansas and one of the 9 largest Methodist churches in the South. 95 new members joined the church in 1922. And if you visit the R.L. Bearden History Hall, which was completed in 1972 in the basement, if you look on the hallway wall, you're going to see a photo of the 1926 congregation when there were 2,800 members. So it's a pretty impressive photo. Also, if you go down in the basement hall, you're going to see a photo of Horace Jewell, who was the church pastor from 1880 to 1884. And this is of interest because the current senior pastor, David Freeman, is the great-great-grandson of Horace. The sanctuary interior looks pretty much like it did when it was completed in 1900. The sanctuary retains its original pews, original windows, color scheme, and design. All of the wood in the sanctuary is pine, except for the pews, which are oak. And you'll notice the repetition of the rounded arch design in the pew ends. Also notice how the pews are curved toward the center of the room, which mirrors the curved design of the second floor gallery above. And the columns on either side are steel covered with plaster. This is the original communion rail right down here, and the kneeling pads were embroidered by the ladies of the church in 1983. The craftsperson that produced the windows is unknown. Some of the windows were gifts of the congregation, and others were given as memorials. Each rose window, the round windows, were paid for by the congregation, and they have different Christian symbols at their center. The south window displays a cross to symbolize the risen and living Christ. The north window features a crown to symbolize Christ's kingship, and the west window features an open Bible to symbolize the sacred literature of the church. The stained glass windows are considered to be irreplaceable because they're created with varying thicknesses rather than the use of color. They might be repaired, but they can't be recreated if something were to happen to them. In 1931, as part of the centennial celebration of the organization of the Methodist congregation in Little Rock, the sanctuary received a new organ and a decorative grill designed by local architect John Parks Allman. Allman changed the organ opening from rectangular to arched in order to match the Romanesque design. You'll see Art Deco elements in the organ grill, which include chevrons, fans, a scalloped pattern, and overlapping arches. The current pipe organ is from the 1980s. New lighting was also added in 1931. The 2 light fixtures at the front of the sanctuary were designed in 2008 to match the existing fixtures. The choir loft area has been redesigned by local architect John Gerard about 2000 because the railing was too high before and you couldn't see the choir when they sat down, so they shortened it. This is the original color scheme used in the church. It was restored in 2000 by Becky Witzel. She also made the banners in the sanctuary at that time. Becky Witzel grew up in Little Rock and attended Washington University School of Fine Arts in St. Louis, where she obtained a BFA in painting and printmaking in 1966. From 1968 to 1978, she worked at the Arkansas Arts Center while also teaching at the University of Arkansas in Little Rock. In 1980, she co-founded Designed Communications, which is a studio that provides a range of design and fabrication services and architectural graphics, exhibit design, and recreation of historic painted decoration. And the fleur-de-lis pattern on the walls and the columns there are Becky Witzel's work. Some of the images were done in relief, and you can still feel the relief pattern. You're welcome to touch the columns if you want. Fleur-de-lis is French for flower of the lily, which symbolizes purity, and or the 3 petals can symbolize the Holy Trinity of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. The rose windows in the second floor gallery had suffered some damage from the application of plexiglass storm windows. Moisture and heat became trapped between the stained glass and the storm windows, which rotted the wood. Also, the soldering in the windows had weakened, which caused the glass to bow out. The church raised approximately $2 million, and the windows were restored by Conrad Schmidt of Wisconsin. They were disassembled, each piece was marked and taken to Wisconsin for cleaning and reconditioning. And the plexiglass was also replaced with glass with UV protection and vents. The Conrad Schmidt Studio was founded in Milwaukee in 1899, and its roots are traced to ecclesiastical and decorative art, stained glass, and interior design. Conrad Schmidt Studios has conserved stained glass windows designed by famous artists such as Louis Comfort Tiffany, Thomas O'Shaughnessy, John Lafarge, F.X. Zettler, and Meyer of Munich. They've also restored theaters designed by architects Rapp and Rapp, John Everson, C. Howard Crane, and Thomas Lamb, and religious and secular buildings designed by Louis Sullivan, Frank Lloyd Wright, among others. So although there was this western expansion in the city and it caused a reduction in attendance over the years, the First United Methodist Church is still very much alive. The church supports 3 separate worship services, and the average weekly attendance at the traditional church service is between 250 to 300 people. So at this point, you can visit other sections of the church on your own. I would definitely suggest going to the balcony to view the rose windows up close, and you can reach those through this hallway in the back here. There's some stairs. There will be guides to help you and show you where to go. You can go upstairs. You can go downstairs to the basement. There are steps or an elevator in the hall directly behind me and behind the sanctuary. While you're upstairs, you can view the John Wesley Chapel, the John Wesley Room and Exhibit. You can also visit the 1950s era Riggs Chapel on the 2nd floor, and you can view another rose window in the stairwell by the chapel. You can also visit the 1896 chapel, which now houses the United Methodist Museum of the Arkansas Conference, which is open to you today as well. And finally, in the basement, you can visit the Robert R.L. Bearden, E.L. Bearden History Room. And that's it. Thank you.